Someone offers you $20. All you have to do is let a stranger keep 80 for themselves. Free money, no effort, no risk. And yet, in study after study, people say no. That should not make sense. $20 is still $20 more than you had a second ago. But the real answer to why you would refuse it is far stranger than simple greed or spite. It reveals a piece of hidden machinery running underneath every negotiation, every paycheck, and every argument you have ever had about what is fair. This is the ultimatum game, and once you understand it, you will never look at a bad deal the same way again. Here is how it works. One person, called the proposer, is given a sum of money, say $100. They decide how to split it with a second person, called the responder. The responder can accept the split and both people keep their share, or the responder can reject it and both people walk away with nothing. One shot, no negotiation, no second round. If humans were the purely rational, self-interested calculators that classical economics assumes, the proposer should offer a single dollar, and the responder should snap it up instantly, because $1 still beats zero. That is just math. But when economist Werner Guth first ran this experiment in 1982, the data refused to cooperate. The most common offer was close to an even split, and whenever a proposer tried to keep the lion's share, offering less than about 30%, responders rejected it more than half the time. They chose to receive nothing, just to make sure the selfish proposer received nothing too. So what are you actually protecting when you set money on fire like that? Hold on to that question, because the answer takes a detour through your own skull first. Neuroscientist Alan Sanfey scanned people's brains while they played this exact game and found something remarkable. A fair offer lit up the brain's normal reward circuitry. An unfair one lit up the anterior insula, the same region that fires when you smell sour milk or bite into spoiled meat. Your brain does not file a low-ball offer under bad math. It files it under contamination. At the very same moment, your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for cold, patient logic, is fighting to keep you calm and take the cash anyway. A quiet civil war breaks out inside your head every time someone tries to shortchange you. And when the disgust wins, you choose the loss on purpose. You might assume this fairness reflex is universal, wired into every human brain the same way. That assumption did not survive contact with the rainforest. Anthropologist Joseph Henrich carried the ultimatum game deep into the Peruvian Amazon to play it with the Machigenga, a community that survives mostly through small-scale gardening and tight family units, with little need for trade among strangers. The results broke the pattern completely. Proposers offered far less than 50%, often closer to a quarter of the total, and responders barely ever rejected it. They took the small amounts without a flicker of the outrage a Western college student would feel at the same offer. That single result quietly rewrote the story. Your hair-trigger sense of fairness is not a universal human default. It is a piece of social software installed by the specific kind of society you grew up in. Large, market-based societies run on trust between total strangers, hundreds of them, every week. You buy food from someone you will never see again. You work for people who do not know your name. For that entire system to hold together without collapsing, a shared, almost automatic expectation of fair treatment has to exist, one that is willing to punish selfishness even at a personal cost. The Machigenga never needed that software installed, because their survival never depended on trusting anonymous strangers at scale. Yours does. So your culture built the reflex in, which raises the obvious question: why does the reflex still fire when you are completely anonymous, alone in a lab, and no one will ever know what you chose? Because your brain does not actually believe you are anonymous. It evolved across small tribal groups where every decision was witnessed by someone, and your reputation was the closest thing you had to a survival tool. A person who quietly accepted every insulting scrap became known as an easy target, and the group adjusted accordingly, pushing them to the bottom of every future exchange. Rejecting a bad offer, even in total secrecy, is your brain performing an old, deeply grooved habit, broadcasting that you are too costly to exploit, just in case anyone happens to be watching. Institutions figured this out long before neuroscientists did, and some of them have built entire strategies around managing your fairness reflex rather than fighting it. Economist Truman Bewley once asked business managers a simple question. During a recession, why not just cut every employee's pay by 5% instead of laying off 5% of the staff outright? Mathematically, the pay cut keeps more people employed. But the managers already knew the answer from experience. A universal pay cut reads as an insulting offer from a greedy proposer, and employees respond the way responders do in the lab. They do not quit outright. They quietly slow down, disengage, and let productivity erode, punishing the company even at their own expense. Layoffs, brutal as they are, do not violate the fairness expectations of the people who keep their jobs. So companies choose the layoff, not because it is kinder, but because it is the version their workforce's insula can tolerate. Airlines learned the same lesson the expensive way. They used to bump overbooked passengers off flights at random, and the backlash was constant, because a forced removal feels exactly like a take-it-or-leave-it offer with no say in the outcome. Now they run a voluntary auction at the gate instead. $200 in vouchers, then $400, then $600, climbing until someone smiles and says yes. Nothing about the underlying math changed. Someone still has to give up their seat. But by letting you set your own price, the airline quietly steps out of the proposer's chair and lets you feel like you negotiated your own good deal, which is enough to keep your anterior insula quiet. You do this on a much smaller scale constantly, usually without noticing. A subscription you enjoy raises its price by $2 a month, an amount that will not touch your budget in any measurable way, and you still spend half an hour hunting through menus just to cancel it. That is not about the $2. That is your brain running the exact same ancient calculation it ran in Werner Guth's lab, deciding that letting a one-sided price hike go unanswered costs you more in status than the service was ever worth. So the $20 sitting on the table in front of you was never really about $20. It was a proposal about your worth, dressed up as a number, evaluated by a piece of software your culture installed in you long before you ever sat down at that table. Someone offers you $20 again. This time, you already know what you are actually deciding. Not whether you can afford to say no, whether you can afford to say yes.